Booksy, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my January TBR recap video. These are some of the physical books that I had on my January TBR. These are some of the books that I looked at the beginning of the month and said, yeah, I want to read those books this month. This is the video where you find out how many of those I want to read those actually translated to I'm reading that or I've read that now. Today's video is just a revisit of those TBR plans and a chance to see how successful I was in meeting my TBR goals. It's not my January recap. That video is coming soon. I try to break up my monthly recap and do it over the course of the month. So far I've posted 2 videos that are called A Closer Book, where I talk about 3 of the books that I read recently and go in a little bit more detail about how I found the book, what spoke to me and what didn't. So if you haven't already started watching my Closer Book series, the 2 videos that I've posted in January are already published and I'll link them in the description box if you haven't watched them before. This is also not the video where I talk about how books are related to each other. That's a book links video, which I started a series here on my channel last year, and that's continuing this year. So that's coming soon. This is also not the video where I show you where I was when I read the book or show you a scene from the book that is mirrored in something that I did during the month. That video is also coming pretty soon. So I have a lot of videos where you're gonna see more or hear more about these books coming soon. Today is just a revisit of my January TBR and to see how successful I was in whether I'm gonna read that book actually translated to, yeah, I read that book in January. So stay tuned for my January TBR revisit and recap. So I have my computer on and we're just gonna watch me on camera both places, and as I show you the book on here, I'll tell you whether I read the book or not. One of the reading goals that I have this year is to read all the books that have won the Man Booker Prize. I've started with the book that won the inaugural Man Booker Prize, Something to Answer For by P.H. Newby. I've also ordered the next 3 books. Starting with the books that won the Man Booker Prize, I have the first 4 books in the order of which they were published. This was published in 1968, so it won the Booker Prize in 1969. This was published in 1969, so it won the prize in 1970. This one was published in 1970, but it didn't get its award until much later because of something called the Lost Man Booker Prize, which we'll talk about in more detail at some point soon. And this one was published and won the prize in 1971. So of these 4 books, I didn't have them at the time when I filmed my January TBR video, but I did read Something to Answer For by P.H. Newby. I reread Bernice Rubin's Elected Member. We're going to be talking about this one in book club on Monday. Then these 2 I didn't get to. I've already read this one, so this would be a reread and it would be a lot easier for me to read, but I didn't have the time to read this one, so I pushed this one back as well because I have to read this one first. So I'm carrying over 2 Man Booker Prize winners into February, which is not a good thing, but I have time, or so I keep telling myself. So of these 4, I only read 2. I didn't read 2 of them. Not a good start. Another goal that I have on my channel this month is a NetGalley purge. I went crazy and downloaded 15 books that are still in my queue and I need to read them. Then we have the NetGalley purge that I was trying to do in January, which is that I'm trying to read the 15 books that were assigned to me on NetGalley and that I promised to read and review ASAP and just didn't get to in 2018 for whatever reason. And I have 15 titles that I started off with. I even had one that was in hardcover because, well, I didn't get to my review in an expedient time, and so the book was published in June 2018. Yeah, something like that. For a while. One of those books is Days of Awe by A.M. I read Days of Awe by A.M. Holmes. I have The Truth About Parallel Lines by Jill D. Locke. Truth About Parallel Lines, I did not read. I have The Girl He Used to Know by Tracy Garvis Graves. Girl He Used to Know by Tracy Garvis Graves, I read this one, reviewed it on my channel. So Much Life Left Over by Louis de Bernier. Too Much Life Left Over, I did not get to. Miracle Creek by Angie Kim. Miracle Creek I did not read. The Day the Sun Died by Yan Lianqi. The Day the Sun Died I did not read. One Part Woman by Perumal Murugan. One Part Woman by Perumal Murugan I did read. I really enjoyed that one. Sean the Book Maniac did a full review of that one on his channel. I'll link that down below if you want to hear more about why you should read that book if you haven't already. My Purple Scented Novel by Ian McEwan. Purple Scented Novel by Ian McEwan, I read that one. It's just a story. It's not a collection of short stories. It is a single short story. I read that one. Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield. Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield I did not get to in January. Kissing Max Holden by Katie Opperman. Better with Age by Phyllis Strop. Kissing Max Holden I did not read. Better with Age I did not read. The Man in a Hurry by Paul Morand. The Man in a Hurry I did not read. Why We Work by Barry Schwartz. The Way We Work I haven't read yet. Together Apart by Natalie K. Martin. Together Apart I haven't read yet. Me, My Hair and I by Elizabeth Benedict. Me, My Hair and I is a collection of essays edited by Elizabeth Benedict, and it was the first book that I read in 2019. The Unhappiness of Being a Single Man by Franz Kafka. The Unhappiness of Being a Single Man is a collection of stories by Franz Kafka. I did read that one in January. I also have some books that I got in December that I want to read and want to read as soon as possible. First is Mad Boy by Nick Arvin. I'd also planned to get to Mad Boy by Nick Arvin in January. I didn't get to this one. The Mad and Furious City by Guy Gunaratney. This is a previous Man Booker nominee. In our Mad and Furious City by Guy Gunaratney. I wanted to read this one in January. I failed at that one. Didn't get to this in January, but I will be reading it pretty soon. I don't know if I have room in my February TBR, but I'll be reading it pretty soon. I also have a couple of arcs that are making their way to me, but right now I have this arc, which I think is being published in February. I was going to save this one for Black History Month because Marlon James, the author, is Jamaican, but I want to read it now as soon as possible. Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James. I read this one. Thank you, beautiful Bookish Bethany, for getting me the arc and for reading and discussing it with me at the end of the month. It was a real treat to have someone to at least have a little bit of a discussion about, because there were points in this book where it got a little gory. Spoiler alert. It's not a spoiler. I'm not going to tell you anything else about the book. You're going to have to come back for the review for that one. So I have reviews scheduled in January, and that is Pretty in Punxsutawney by Laurie Boyle Crumpton and Between Before and After by Maureen Doyle McQuarrie. Pretty in Punxsutawney by Laurie Boyle Crumpton I read, and there's still a giveaway. If you're interested in getting a copy of this one, click the link down below where you can see how to win a copy. The giveaway ends on Groundhog Day, which I think is tomorrow, so act now. I also read Between Before and After by Maureen Doyle McQuarrie. I won this arc in a giveaway from Goodreads, and this is Stay Up With Hugo Best by Erin Summers. I did read Stay Up With Hugo Best by Erin Summers in January, even though there is a flotation device on the front, and this book is probably meant to be read in the summer. I read it in January. During one of the coldest Januaries that I have experienced, I read it. First of my library stash is a book that I'm a little ashamed to say I still have. The Girl Who Wrote Loneliness by Kyung Suk Shin is a book that I got from the library, I think in October. Wonderful. I finally read this book. I've had this book out from the library since October. I finally read it. More on that coming later, but I read it. I read The Girl Who Wrote Loneliness by Kyung Suk Shin. This is about a young woman who is writing about her life, even though she's not sure whether it's fiction or not. More on this coming soon. Other books that I just picked up from the library this week. First is An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. I read this one. Ta-Nehisi Coates' We Were 8 Years in Power. I read his Between the World and Me, and it was one of my favorite books in 2017. This one I did not read, but I'm saving this one for February because this is a Black author talking about a very important period in Black history, which was the rise of the first African-American president to take office in the United States. And so I think I'm gonna say that this was intentional, that I'm saving this for February. So it's not that I failed in January, it's that I made a conscious decision to not read this book then. Then there is The Death of Mrs. Westaway by Ruth Ware. I read Ruth Ware's Woman in Cabin 10 last year, and there were things that I liked about her book. There are things that I like about her writing, but that book, The Death of Mrs. Westaway by Ruth Ware, I read. This right here is a stash of the 12 physical books that I have right now on my January TBR. I also have 14 other electronic versions from my NetGalley. I also have 4 books that are on their way to me. It's ambitious, I know, but I could do it. At least I'm gonna try. These are the physical books that I had on my January TBR. Now that you've watched the video, you know how successful I was at meeting some percentage of my January TBR goals. Leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear how successful you were at your January TBR, whether a lot of the books that you wanted to read, you did get to read, or whether you just went rogue during the middle of the month and said, you know what? I'm just going to read what I want to. I'd love to hear about that as well. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Welcome to all the new subscribers as well. I don't know where you guys came from, but thanks for being here. I love having you here. And if you're just visiting and you haven't committed yet, I'd love to make a commitment with you. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And of course, share this video if you know someone else who you think would enjoy having a bookish conversation with me. I'd love to meet them as well. So we'll talk in the comments. I'd love to hear from you which of the books that was on your January reading plans that was the most satisfying. So we'll talk in the comments, and until next time, happy reading.